Has the DRC taken a step back to the future? The former president makes a comeback as his party dominates the new government. Was this a political masterstroke, or does the country need him for stability? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Joseph Kabila. This year began with a new dawn in the DRC, when the Democratic Republic of Congo had its first peaceful transfer of power in 60 years. In January, Joseph Kabila's 2 decades of rule ended with a new president and hopes for a new era. And for the new leader, there was no time to waste trying to address the country's challenges, from the more than 100 armed groups wreaking havoc in the east to an Ebola epidemic spiraling out of control. But for 6 months, President Felix Tshisekedi couldn't even form a government. Now he's been forced to work with his predecessor, the very man many blame for the nation's woes. The majority of the new coalition government's members are from Kabila's Common Front for Congo. And it's not just that distribution of power that tells an interesting story. The DRC's mining sector is the backbone of the economy. And guess who still controls it? Former President Joseph Kabila. So, did he ever really relinquish control? Haider Abbasi reports.
It was a surprise victory for the Democratic Republic of Congo. Felix Tshisekedi became the new president in January. He succeeded Joseph Kabila, who'd been leader since 1991. It was the first peaceful transition of power since independence from Belgium in 1960. But the DRC still hasn't escaped Kabila's shadow. The elections last December also determined the shape of the National Assembly, and it's there Kabila dominates. Although no longer president, he's still a member of parliament, and his coalition, the Common Front for Congo, known as the FCC, won a majority in the lower house, with 288 of the 500 seats. Then the FCC won the Senate in March, giving Kabila's coalition control of both houses. This resulted in a deadlock, and for 6 months the DRC had no government. Then in July, a power-sharing deal was announced. The new government will consist of 65 members, 42 from Kabila's FCC alliance and 23 from Tshisekedi's coalition. Kabila would take control of the defense, finance and justice ministries, and crucially, he'll also be in charge of Congo's mines. DRC is a major producer of metals, including copper, tin and gold. It's how the DRC makes most of its money. Supporters of Martin Fayulu are protesting against Kabila and President Tshisekedi. Fayulu was the runner-up in last year's election and has called Tshisekedi's win an electoral coup.
Here today, we are the object of aggression organized by the police and sent by Kabila and Tshisekedi.
Fayulu says a deal was struck between Kabila and Tshisekedi before the presidential poll, and insists he's the real winner. The Catholic Church, seen as a trusted and powerful institution in the DRC, agrees. It deployed 40,000 election observers and says its count shows Fayulu won. And at least one poll showed he was the favourite in the run-up to the vote. So was last year's election free and fair? And can the DRC ever govern without the influence of Joseph Kabila? Haider Abbasi, The Newsmakers.
Well, let's go to London, where I'm joined by Vava Tampa. He's an activist and founder of Save the Congo, a campaign group working for peace in the region. Vava, good to have you back on the program. When we look at this power-sharing deal and the dividing of the main posts between Tshisekedi and Kabila, it's hard not to think that this was possibly Kabila's plan all along. Would that be accurate?
Absolutely. This is one of the reasons why we had been complaining from the onset. We have been protesting and fighting from the onset. It's quite clear that the man who won the 2018 presidential election was Martin Fayulu, But Kabila made a deal with Felix Tshisekedi, and Felix Tshisekedi made a terrible deal in which he was only given the presidency, but Kabila kept all the executive power. And in Congo, power per se actually rests with the prime minister. The prime minister is the political boss. So we have a president who is a ceremonial president, and Kabila essentially controls all the power. So we are in a country with essentially three presidents. One who was elected, Martin Fayulu, the second, Felix Tshisekedi, who was appointed by Kabila, and the third, Kabila himself, Joseph Kabila himself, who retains all the power.
Tshisekedi in the past criticized Kabila's government as corrupt. He criticized Kabila's government as dictatorial. Does that mean anything right now?
Well, Kabila, because he still retains all the power, so we continue in that dictatorial system, although now it's under a different guise, under a different name or a different face, but the system continues. And the reason I say the system continues because we have been fighting. The key priority for the Congolese people is justice, because peace begins with justice. And we know under Kabila, because Kabila retains all the power, there isn't going to be any justice. I don't see how Kabila's Minister of Justice would allow, let's say, a case against one of the top military officials to be heard. So we continue in that system of predatory and dictatorial under Kabila, although it's not happening under a Congolese name, and that Congolese name is Felix Tshisekedi.
The key mining portfolio and having the power to look after the mining resources as much as you can, that falls under Kabila's remit and his allies. What does that mean to you?
Congo is fascinatingly rich. Congo is estimated in terms of natural resources alone that Congo it's worth around 24 trillion, which is equivalent to the GDP of the US, the EU, Canada, and Australia combined. So Congo is fascinatingly rich, and those riches are essentially under our earth, under the soil. So mining is a key element. I'll give you one example. Take Kivu, for instance, North Kivu, which is not being ravaged by Ebola. 1/3 of North Kivu's territory, it's mines, and the other 1/3, it's forest, and the other 1/3 is being shared between people and rivers. So Congo is fascinatingly rich, and Kabila retaining control of mining resources or mining portfolio, essentially that means he is able to decide who in terms of multinational and who in terms of countries internationally would be granted mining concessions. And in doing so, he will be able, in a nutshell, to decide how that country react on Congo issues internationally. If Kabila decides then to give, let's say, the UK a mining concessions, then that essentially forces the UK to somehow keep quiet when issues of justice or impunity or killings is raised in, let's say, the EU or the UN Security Council. Right. So that's how he plays around.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to get into how to tackle Ebola and how to maybe put a lid on a lot of the instability in the east of the country in a moment. But just politically, is it not maybe the reality that Kabila's FCC holds a majority in parliament? Because if you take the Democratic Republic of Congo and you divide it up into its smallest parts, they just have the most amount of influence on the ground, whether you like it or not.
Not at all, far from it. Look, it's virtually impossible for Kabila himself to sort of admit and say, you know what, we could not win in the presidential election, that Kabila's candidate Emmanuel Shadari could not be declared president because the entire population had turned against Kabila and his regime. We had lived and died, 6 million Congolese had lived and died under this dictatorial regime. So the Congolese people wanted change, and we fought and we died for that change. And in December 2018, we voted for for change, for another candidate, and for other people in parliament. Now, Kabila understood that if he allows that change to happen, and you need to bear in mind, your viewer would remember this, Kabila is incredibly young, he's under 45 years old. He knows that if there is change in Congo, he would spend the rest of his life at the ICC in The Hague for crimes committed against the Congolese people. So he struck a deal with Felix Tshisekedi in which he decided, you know what, I would give you the presidency so you can also become rich if you want to become rich, and I would retain all the power and all the influence in the country so that I can continue to protect people around me who committed crimes against humanity and war crimes, and so that this system can continue, the Congolese people can continue to perish.
What if you gave them a chance? Let's say you're absolutely right and that Kabila has been responsible for the mess, especially that the East is under, where there could have been this massive bonanza from all the gold and diamonds and coltan and cobalt and iron and so forth, but it only brought war and bloodshed and refugees, and now we have an Ebola crisis. Say you're right. All those millions of dead people and all the terrible poverty and so on is his fault. But now with Tshisekedi, there's a possibility that he could turn things around. Would you be willing to give him that chance?
I would have been willing to give Tshisekedi that chance if Tshisekedi had some sort of power or legitimacy. Look, we need to bear in mind the root cause of Congolese crisis or suffering is the issues of legitimacy. Now, let's go back to 1960. Okay, that's where we started. The Congolese people voted for Patrice Lumumba. The West refused him. So Lumumba was killed and Mobutu was placed in power for 32 years. And failures and crises under that 32 years of dictatorship, which happened during the 20th century, led us to this situation today, which led us to Kabila the father and Kabila the son. In 2006, the Congolese people voted for another gentleman, Jean-Pierre Bemba. Again, Kabila retained power with the support of the West. In 2011, I was one of the EU observers on the ground. Again, the Congolese people voted for another candidate, Etienne Tshisekedi. Again, Kabila was able to keep power with the support of the West. It was so obvious that Kabila had lost the elections that no one in Africa actually attended the inauguration. Only Robert Mugabe attended the inauguration. So we found ourselves in a similar situation, 2018, in which the people again mobilized and voted for another candidate. And on this occasion, Martin Fayulu and Kabila, again with the support of the West, decide to strike a deal in which Felix Tshisekedi is given the presidency, but Kabila retains all the power. And you need to bear in mind, when we talk about the mining concessions in Congo, those mining concessions are not owned by Congolese or Africans. They are owned by the West, by Western multinational companies. This is how that politics continues to play. So when we talk about giving a chance, you cannot give someone a chance who doesn't have any chance of succeeding whatsoever. Felix Tshisekedi doesn't have control of the prime ministership. He doesn't have control of education system or control of any substantial ministry in the country in which we could sort of say, you know what, we can build from this point going forward. This is the reason why we are calling foul.
Now, as if the DRC didn't have enough problems to deal with, 1,700 people dead from Ebola. The World Health Organization has called it a global health emergency, and we've had scores of attacks on health centers where people are trying to fix the problem and stem the spread. Is this government doing all it can to try and stop and conquer and destroy the threat of Ebola?
I would hope so. I'm hoping against hope that Felix Tshisekedi and other people around him are doing whatever they can to stop Ebola from spreading. I'm hoping against hope because I understand that they spent the last 7 months essentially bickering against one another between Kabila himself and Felix Tshisekedi. The reason we still do not have a government per se, it's because Felix Tshisekedi could not nominate, could not appoint people he wanted to appoint in different ministry. Kabila objected. That essentially gives you an idea. So while Tshisekedi and Kabila are fighting over who should control what in terms of the government, our people in the Kivus are being killed in Ebola. And we need to bear in mind there are 3 elements here which is essentially incredibly substantial in why Ebola continue to spread in the Kivu. One of those is local people, from what I understand from the research we have done, essentially do not trust anything or anyone that represents the international community. Look, over 6 million people, 6 million Congolese have been killed in that country. And those deaths could have been prevented, but the international community failed. In fact, I think refused to stop those killings from being prevented. And so for many people on the ground, the killing from Ebola, dying from Ebola, it's not much different from dying from hunger, from bullet, from displacement, or from other illness and diseases they have been facing. So they are refusing. We have seen cases in which local people are absolutely refusing to seek help. They are attacking even Ebola response centers. One of the reasons we are asking the World Health Organization to start employing local people so that we can contain these crises. So there are many things at play, and I'm hopeful, and I'm hoping against hope that Tshisekedi and his people have all the tools and all the expertise to contain this crisis, because if it's not contained, my God, I fear for my people.
And as we circle this back to the question of legitimacy, you said you believe that Martin Fayulu was the democratically elected leader of the country and that he was hard done by and cheated. What should he do? You have a country that has tremendous problems of immediate concern, as we've mentioned, Ebola, the warring groups in the east, an economy that needs help. Should Martin Fayulu fight for that legitimacy, or should he step back and say, okay, well, this new government's the new government and let's give them a chance to sort this out?
Look, this is an issue which a conversation we've been having even within the Congolese community. Look, I'm an activist, I'm a community organizer, and I come from a tradition in which speaking the truth and fighting for justice is incredibly substantial, incredibly significant. It's a tradition of Patrice Lumumba. It goes all the way back to Kimpa Vita. So I would continue to speak the truth because that needs to be registered for the future generation. And that truth is Martin Fayulu won. We are in this situation because Felix made a deal with Joseph Kabila. Now, on what needs to be done going forward is Martin Fayulu is in a position in which I don't think he can. What needs to be done is Felix Tshisekedi needs to reach out to Martin Fayulu and have a conversation, and that conversation should evolve around how can we broaden this government, how can we bring you into this government, and how can you ensure the next election cannot be as awful as the previous one was. And this goes back to, again, to the issue mentioned, in which Kabila keeping all the key ministry under his belt. Now, the Ministry of Justice is under Kabila. That, in a nutshell, means Kabila would be able to decide who would be declared the president next time around, because the Minister of Justice, he's the one who would then appoint Supreme Court judges. Those are the people who then would go on into hearing cases of when there is crisis in terms of, who won and who lost, who would decide who won. And we know in 2019, they actually declared Felix Tshisekedi won against all evidence which were produced by the Catholic Church and which were leaked from the CENI server. So we are in an incredibly tricky situation. However, we continue to encourage Felix Tshisekedi to reach out to Martin Fayulu, as well as other people like Jean-Pierre Bemba and Moise Katumbi and Adolphe Muzito and so on and so forth, so they can see how they can regroup themselves again and see how together we can save the Republic. If Felix fails to do that, I think the Congolese people would be harsher on him, because it's one thing to make a deal with Kabila, it's another thing to refuse to reach out to people who could help save the Republic.
Vava Tampa, thank you once again for taking the time. Good to talk to you here on the Newsmakers. Triple Talaq has been a highly controversial practice in India. It's where a Muslim man can instantly end his marriage by simply saying divorce in Arabic 3 times. Many have argued the tradition is easily open to misuse, with reports some men have legally abandoned their wives after a simple email or even a WhatsApp message. But trying it now could land you in jail. For years, many have fought to outlaw the practice, arguing it leaves women vulnerable. So why are so many skeptical about the government's motives? Melinda Nusifora explains.
Talaq, talaq, talaq. Uttering those 3 words in India as a means of securing an instant divorce is now illegal. But the new law is dividing the women it's supposed to protect. Triple Talaq is a centuries-old religious rite which allows a Muslim man to divorce his wife simply by saying, writing, or these days even texting the word 3 times. Last week, India's parliament passed a bill outlawing the practice.
The motion that the bill be passed, subject to correction, as 99 noes 84, the bill that the motion that the bill be passed is adopted.
Divorce remains legal, but men now face up to 3 years in prison if they use this religious practice.
आज का दिन बहुत ऐतिहासिक है। आज का दिन इस हमारे मुस्लिम समाज की जो बेटियां हैं, जो बहनों हैं, उनके साथ जो नाइंसाफी चल रही थी, आज दोनों हाउस ने उनके साथ न्याय किया है। मुझे इस बात का बहुत संतोष है। ये एक बदलते भारत की शुरुआत है।
आज वाकई में हकीकत में हम लोग बहुत खुश हैं और इसका दिल से हम लोग बयान कर सकते हैं कि जो पीड़ित महिलाएं होने वाली थी वो बच जाएंगी और उनका टूटने से घर बच जाएगा और ये हम मुस्लिम महिलाएं जो दिल से खुशी मना रही हैं और तहे दिल से उनका कानून का स्वागत करती हैं।
But not all Muslim women are quite so pleased. There are some who argue the government has no right interfering in their religious laws. Another section of the community says this change is an example of the ruling Hindu Nationalist Party's bias against the Muslim minority.
Somehow only when it comes to Muslim men, the government is anxious to take a law and bring it to the book. So we felt that this was wrong.
So are Muslim women in India better off under the new law, or has the Indian Parliament overstepped its mark? Melinda Nusifora, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from New Delhi is human rights activist Shabnam Hashmi. In Mumbai is Hasina Khan. She founded the Bebak Collective, a coalition of groups speaking for the rights of marginalized women. And in Ahmedabad is Zakia Soman. She's the co-founder of Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, a human rights group which campaigned for the ban on triple talaq. Good to have you all on the Newsmakers. Shabnam Hashmi, is this a victory for Muslim women?
No, this is not at all a victory. The victory was in Supreme Court when Supreme Court declared that the triple talaq is invalid. After that, bringing the bill is actually detrimental to Muslim women. It is not a victory at all.
Why is it detrimental?
Because one, that the bill has criminalized a civil case. And secondly, when you are saying that a man who gives triple talaq, if he is sent to jail, then what happens to the woman? the matrimonial home is not going to be very, cordial with her. Who is going to give her compensation to her and her children? And anyway, once the triple talaq is declared invalid, then even if the man is saying talaq, 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 it doesn't mean anything. And the woman can easily go to the Domestic Violence Act under that. If there is any problem within her household, she can go there. There was no need to bring this bill at all because the major aim of this is to demonize and continue to demonize the minorities.
Okay, so
that is the only majoritarian political this is serving.
Right. Okay. So Zakia Soman, many critics have said, well, in context, while this might be on its own inherently good, but it's insincere from this government because it's nested within a broader attack against minorities, particularly Muslims. What do you think about that, Zakia?
Let me make it very clear. It is not about the government. It is not about any political party. It is about justice for Muslim women. Let us not forget that this government has been in power only for the last 5 years. Muslim women have been demanding justice in family matters for the last several years. In fact, the Quran gave us rights 1400 years ago. And the Constitution of India was also framed, it's now more than 70 years to that. So it's the Muslim women who have been denied any kind of legal protection in matters of family and divorce. This is a huge gap in our democratic system. It is too bad that it happens at the hands of the BJP, because the so-called secular governments and the supposedly Muslim-friendly governments did nothing to attend to the demands of Muslim women about justice and about fair play in divorce, which is both their constitutional right as well as their Quranic right. So I don't want to make this about the government or about anybody else. This is about the women demanding justice and getting some legal means at their disposal.
Right, Zakia, but there are those who would say that if a Hindu man abandons his wife, for example, it's still a civil case. But if it's a Muslim man, the details are triple talaq, whether it's via WhatsApp or whatever, but it's still abandonment. That becomes a criminal case and this Muslim man can go to jail. In a time when you have a Hindu majoritarian, Hindu nationalist government, it seems convenient that the Muslim goes to jail and the Hindu does not. Do you accept that argument?
Not at all, because first of all, abandonment is not triple talaq. Abandonment by the man doesn't enjoy sanction and approval of religion. If a man abandons if a man abandons his wife, he'll be known as a bad man socially, by family, by neighbors, by community, by everybody. Here, in the name of religion, patriarchy has been masquerading through this malpractice. So first of all, let me just make it clear that abandonment is very different from triple talaq. Secondly, we have a very poor record of men going to jail in the Hindu Bigamy Act, in the Dowry Act, in the Domestic Violence Act. And here, the right to register the complaint or the FIR, the first information report, the right to register the case is with the wife of family member who are all fellow Muslims. So let us not demonize the wife, because so far going by the record, it is the man who is on the wrong side, supported by clergy, supported by politicians, supported by all the conservative patriarchal elements in our society. It is the woman who is on the receiving end. So just even before she has her chance at justice, let us not demonize her.
Right. Hasina Khan, is Zakia right?
See, I would just want to tell you, we are opposed the criminalization bill. It's not a meaning here we are supporting for the patriarchy. We all of us know the last many years we fought for the Muslim women's rights issues. The patriarchal is every community existence against for the all gender rights. Those are the raising the issues against for the family, against for the violence, against for the domestic violence. So we all of us are aware that domestic violence, the patriarchal system is everywhere. So against for the criminalization bill, it's not a meaning that we justify for the patriarchal system. It is not a meaning that we are the supporting for the Muslim man. It is not a meaning of we are the against because of the Hindutwadi government.
Okay, but
Why we oppose for the
okay, but
criminalization
Hasina,
bill?
that's what Zakia is saying. Is that too bad? Congress had many years to
No,
push this through.
no,
It's
no.
too bad. Sometimes it
Actually,
happens to be the people you don't like who push through the bills and the laws that you've been fighting for all this time. That's what she's saying. Address that.
okay, here is the 2 points. Zakia was saying it's a Supreme Court matter. Of course, Supreme Court always intervene for the gender just rights issues, and we are the petitioner to support for the, and we are very celebrating for this. The Supreme Court gave this judgment. Here is we not talking about the Supreme Court. Here is talking about the criminalization bill. This government needs approval under the our majoritarian thoughts and numbers. So that's why we are against for the criminalization. We are not against for the Supreme Court judgment because we are the petitioner. We are the celebration for this venue, you know. So this is a two level. Zakia was saying that the Supreme Court is intervening so many years. We all of us knows. We all of us know. We really want to approach. We are really the Supreme Court should be give the very good judgment. We are not talking about the Supreme Court judgment. Here it is talking about the criminalization bill. The Supreme Court gave the minority judgment, and this government is following the minority judgment. In the minority judgment, it's unconstitutional. Can't following the recent government.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me bring back
So
Shabnam.
here is actually
Right.
different point.
Okay,
Yeah.
I want to bring Shabnam back here. So Shabnam, one of the points that you made earlier on is that who's going to look after the woman and possibly the children as well if the man's in jail. But isn't the point that if the guy has already hit a woman with triple talaq, he has abandoned her, he is a deadbeat anyway, and he's a coward because he's hit her with just 3 talaqs on the spot. So worrying about who's going to look after her, she's on her own anyway, whether he's in jail or not.
Yes.
Isn't that the reality?
Exactly.
No, that was the position before the Supreme Court judgment came. Once the Supreme Court judgment came, triple talaq became invalid. So if the man can say talaq 6 times, it is not going to matter at all because it is invalid.
Yes.
And if it is invalid, then why are you criminalizing it? Then why are you sending the man to the jail? Because it is invalid and he is supposed to provide for the wife and the children.
So you believe
Once
that
you
the
send
Supreme...
him to the jail, then there is nobody to
Okay, so
do
just
that.
for clarity, you believe the Supreme Court judgment was enough and sufficient to be enforceable to prevent men from doing this. Is that what you're saying, Shabnam?
What I'm saying that even if the men say it many times, it is invalid. A man can come and say talaq, 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 but it is invalid. And if he insists that the woman must leave the house, she has the provision under the Domestic Violence Act to go to the court, to go to the police station and get and keep staying in the same house and get security and get the maintenance also.
Okay, so is
why
that,
bring
okay.
in this
Okay,
bill?
so let's ask Zakia, because Zakia is shaking her head in disbelief. Why don't you think that's possible, Zakia?
See, because despite of the Supreme Court judgment, men have been giving triple talaq to their wives, and the wife kept on protesting that the judgment doesn't permit you. He says, to hell with you and to hell with the judgment. Go and, do whatever you want to do with the judgment. Go ahead and find a way out. To whom is she supposed to go with the judgment? How is the judgment going to be implemented in her life? There are several judgments of the Supreme Court giving punishment in so many different cases, in the case of murder, in the case of economic crime, in the cases on all kinds of crimes. That doesn't mean that they don't have to be backed up by law. See, we have to understand that punishment for the men is not
how is this new bill going to make a difference?
Punishment for the men is not going.
From that argument, this new bill is not going to make any difference.
It is going to make the difference because this will act as a huge deterrence. The woman will tell him that you want to give me talaq, please do give the talaq. But let's discuss, let's talk, give me what is rightfully mine, give me all my rights, give me my belongings, give me my children, give me my meher, give me what is right. Let's have a mediated divorce.
But we have
you cannot just throw me out. If you throw me out, I will go and complain about you to the police. All of you should be counseling the men to not indulge in criminal behavior. You are all somewhere supporting the patriarchal status quo by blindly siding with the men who have been unjustly and unfairly dealing with the wives.
No,
so
not at
far.
all. Not at
So
all,
why
Zakia
don't you
Soman.
counsel the men
No one is
indulge in
supporting
these
the
kind of
patriarchal
ways?
setup.
Yeah.
So that is
No,
what
not at
it
all.
is translating
You are
to
highly
Shabnam.
mistaken on that.
You are not directly supporting the patriarchal
Okay,
setup.
let's get a
but
response
that
from
is
Hasina.
what it is translating
Okay.
into.
Hasina,
That
come
is
in.
what it is leading to. You because you are so obsessed by the fact that this law is brought by the BJP government.
Okay, Zakia, give us a second.
With
Zakia.
9 out of 10 policies of the BJP government.
Zakia.
But it is not, this problem is not to
Give
do
us a
with the
second
BJP
here.
government. This problem is much older and there is no chance of it getting addressed. Too bad that it only happened now.
Okay, Hasina, come in. Your response.
Here I just want to say this is actually, no, we don't want to give the character certificate who we are the very good as a gender rights feminist person, okay? We are working, you are working, so many working, and Shabnam also. We all of us are part of the women's movement and human rights movement for the so many years, okay? So we are not like to give the certificate, you are the person or the protecting for the women and we are protecting for the patriarchy. No, please. So just understanding for these issues. I just here want to say this. Why we against for the criminalization bill? Here is our personal laws is a civil law. It's not a criminal law. Here we want against for the criminalization bill. Here is a saying this is a 3 years imprisonment. If a husband, I just want to raise this here. The Supreme Court was saying the triple talaq is invalid after the 22nd August 2017 judgment. So why this government is trying to say that this invalid talaq is a valid under this criminalization bill? So it means what is the situation for the women's marital status? Is it women is if this bill is applied for this women, what is the status of the women? The women is a married, divorcee, single. What is the situation? What is the status? This status is very confused for this bill actually. The one is under the bill is what is it saying? This blood relationship have a right to against for the complaint if it is man is give a divorce. It means here is in India and so many countries also we have other honor killing systems and so much like the Kha Panchayat. So blood relationship have so many problem if you not willing your parents if you're not willing the marriage for your parents. So maybe parents have a rights, your whatever your blood relationship have a rights to against for the couple. So this is the one problem. The second thing is here is not mentioning about the household responsibility. What is about the status of the young women? Those are the living with a joint family, your rental house, whatever. It is not clear to say.
But Hasina, why don't you give it an opportunity to see how it will be enforced?
When we got this judgment, we approached the minority minister, we approached the National Minority Commission. You know, this bill is, if somebody, I know this is a very patriarchal system and this is experiences for the so many years. It's not suddenly happened after the judgment. It's a government should be implementation for the Supreme Court judgment, not to following the minority judgment. So now we actually 5-6 women is approached to us. They got the divorce. They got some unilateral talaq. We approached the Domestic Violence Act 2005. We have a civil law. We have a secular law. So women should be filed under this using the civil laws, secular laws. So what is the Zakia was saying? Here is in this country we don't have a secular law. We can't approach for the maintenance.
But there is a Hindu Marriage Act. There is a Christian Marriage Act. If Hindu women can have protection of Hindu Marriage Act, Christian women can have protection of Christian Marriage Act. Why should Muslim women be denied the protection of Muslim family law?
Zakia, I think one of the points here, Zakia, and sorry for jumping in here, but people would go, well, because India is a massive kaleidoscope of religious plurality and religious diversity built into the secular constitution was the allowance for each religion to have its own personal law. But it seems as if the broader law is picking on one community right now while allowing the others to get off scot-free.
The others have laws based on their religion. We have some 8 or 9 laws based on the Hindu religion. beginning with the Hindu Marriage Act, the Hindu Succession Act, whole lot of acts. There is a Christian Marriage Act, there's an Indian Divorce Act. I'm not for a moment suggesting that Hindu women and Christian women and all other women have got rid of patriarchy. No, we are a patriarchal society. But our Hindu sisters and Christian sisters and Sikh and Jain sisters enjoy a semblance of a protection of laws based on in their religion. But because our clergy has joined hands with the patriarchal politicians, there has been a nexus between them, which has resulted in the denial of reform in personal law. Muslim women are seeking parity with Hindu women. We are seeking parity with Christian women. Just as they enjoy the protection of those laws, we also want the protection of our law. The secular laws are there for everybody, but we have very low education standards. I don't think even 0.01% couples go and marry under the Special Marriage Act. So we have to give legal parity to the Muslim women and the whole Muslim community, just like we have given those legal laws around based on religion in Hindu and Christian religions.
I want to bring Shabnam in here because I want to ask about the community, because Zakia mentioned that there seems to be, in her opinion, a problem within the community and in the interpretation of things as well. So across the Muslim world, there are different interpretations of divorce as well. In some places, the talaq is seen as 3 separate stages over a period of months, sometimes years, and so on, right? Whereas, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, as far as I understand, with a more Deobandi interpretation in India, it's the word itself, once it's said 3 times, whether it's said verbally or via text or so on, that's a killer blow, and that is finality, right? So there's a more literalist interpretation of this. I wonder, Shabnam, if the root cause isn't the issue of interpretation, and whether within the Muslim community, the clerics and others should be looking at other countries to say, well, there are other Muslim majority countries in the world that ban this instant triple talaq. Talaq is a process. We should have a looser, more open-minded interpretation to this. Might that be the root cause, Shabnam?
Well, there isn't a difference of opinion or interpretation, because there are different ways of giving talaq. The only talaq which has been abolished or made invalid is the talaq in one go, where you, one after another, thrice you say talaq, talaq, talaq. The other talaq, which you can give over a period of 3 months, still exists. It is not invalid. So these are two. Only the triple talaq, which is said in one time, has been abolished in all the Muslim countries also. The other provision for talaq exists, and that exists in India too also. We are only debating about this one-time talaq. But I want to talk about something else, this whole question of patriarchy. According to me, what this bill has done has actually emboldened the patriarchal forces within the Muslim community, and the Muslim patriarchal forces and the majoritarian patriarchal forces, they have put their hands together. Because after this bill, after 2002, the Muslim women, a large number of groups, had started making spaces for themselves. The Muslim women had started making spaces for them, talking about various changes which needed to be brought into the community and in the laws and so on and so forth. But this one bill emboldened the patriarchal forces, the religious conservative forces, so much that we have had millions of Muslim women mobilized by these forces, and they are on the roads shouting that, save Shariat and save Islam.
I see.
So before this, that was not happening.
Okay.
Even the women who were involved in various organizations, including the representatives who are sitting here, even their own members, join the Maulvis in demanding and saying, because there is so much of pressure on the Muslim woman to safeguard Islam. So instead of saying that, my rights are being manipulated within this, instead of fighting for those, she became a pawn in the hands of the fundamentalists.
Okay.
And all because of this bill which was brought in the parliament.
Okay, Zakia, this law has emboldened patriarchal forces.
It depends how you look at it, but I believe that the women who are brought out on the streets are not empowered women, are not informed women. They have been the victims of patriarchal interpretations of religion. and they are being instrumentalized, they are being used by the clerics and politicians to further their own agenda and their own politics. And actually my sympathies are with these women who are now being used as pawns. This was so far happening on the side of the rightist political parties in our country. Now it has blatantly been happening on the part of the Muslim conservatives also.
I have less than a minute left on the program, so I want to give Hasina a final answer here. If you could keep it brief, please.
I just want to tell you one thing is, this government is BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party. Whenever they came to power, they last 25 years, they keep saying, we want to change, we want to uniform civil code. And we always asking this government, where is your uniform civil code? Show your uniform civil code draft. Discuss the interaction and show the paper for this in this country. Where is your uniform civil code? Why this government is playing the game for the piecemeal, and why is government is talking about the uniform civil code? I very strongly objections. This government is not talking about the Hindu code being in other personal laws. Every personal laws have a gender bias, and whole patriarchal system is full of the talking about the whole patriarchal system. So we definitely abolish these kind of gender bias discrimination. Here is actually want to say, like this whole Hindu code bill and the Parsi code bill is about the codification. That's why saying if you want to codification, any kind of you want to changing for the Muslim personal laws, there is a uniform civil code bill. Show the uniform, talk about this. And another point is last one.
Hasina, we're out of time.
We are just I want to finish. Here is we're talking about the criminalization bill. It means this bill is actually, it's a more victimizing for the Muslim women. It's not a protective for these Muslim women. And this government is one level is targeting for the Muslim community at the name of the Shri Ram and the lynching for the beef. And now is they're talking about the Muslim women. This is a really violent for the using the shoulder for the Muslim women and targeting for the community. We are not supporting their objections. This government, it's not at the
Hasina, I really have to wrap now.
This government is
Okay.
Yes.
Hasina, Zakia and Shabnam, it's been a pleasure having all of you on the Newsmakers. I thank you very much for joining us. The biggest story making news in India today is that the government has scrapped the special status of Indian-administered Kashmir. A presidential decree abolished the decades-old law that gave the territory some autonomy. It comes amid a huge security crackdown, with New Delhi having deployed tens of thousands of soldiers to the disputed region in recent days. Local leaders have been placed under house arrest and mobile networks are down. We'll be looking at this situation closely on our next episode, but for now, it's worth revisiting what Kashmir's separatist leader told us when he was on the show earlier this year. Mirwais Umar Farooq spoke to us just hours before his house was raided in February. He told us India's military occupation of Kashmir must end.
As far as the people of Jammu and Kashmir are concerned, the leadership of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, we regret every killing which happens on our soil, be it of a Kashmiri boy, be it of an Indian soldier or a Pakistani soldier at the LOC. But the problem here is that, we are the ones, because we can understand the pain and agony, because we are the ones who are losing our young people every day. Every day we have to shoulder 5-6 coffins of Kashmiris who are being killed ruthlessly under the garb of military operations, under the garb of CASO. And we need to acknowledge the fact that why is a situation, we have reached a point where young Kashmiri boys of 18 years old, 20 years old, this young man, Adil, who was a student, who left his studies and became a suicide bomber. What led him to join this
your ideology?
Approach? So this is a big question. And because we primarily believe that because the government of India is ignoring the political problem, they are not trying to look at the genesis of the issue, which is a political problem. You cannot compare Kashmir with Maharashtra, with Bombay,
Why not?
with any other.
Why not?
Because there are UN resolutions which India is a signatory to. So you have to understand the fact that the basic problem is that there are forces in India, especially the government, who are trying to give an impression that the struggle of Kashmiris is sponsored. It is being aided and abetted by external forces. The fact is that if you look at militancy, look at the militancy of the last 2 to 3 years. 520 deaths occurred last year, 2018, out of which around 270 were militants. 260 are Kashmiri boys. So 95% of the are those boys who are Kashmiri, who are being killed, who are being maimed. Look at the arrests, look at the detentions. You know, you know 2016 they used the pellet guns on Kashmiris. 11,000 people were affected by those. 3,000 people, young boys, were blinded by those pellets. So I think this is a very easy way out for the people in India, and especially the government, to put an onus on external forces that because Pakistan is doing this and this, that is why the people of Kashmir are on the street. There was a charge against us. The Hurriyat is paying the people of Kashmir 500 rupees to every boy to go and throw stones. They were charged, our leaders were arrested. They are still in Tihar jail, the notorious jail. 14 of our Hurriyat activists are behind bars. I mean, you know, the situation has gone from bad to worse. There are cases against us. I am most of the time under house arrest. So are my other colleagues. Last year, 2018, I was 160 days, I was put under house arrest. Hurriyat is not allowed to go out. We are not allowed to meet people. We need to understand that even by the standards of the government of India, they are saying that there are 150 to 200 militants active in the valley, out of which 90% are local. For dealing with 200 militants, you don't need 600,000 troops. You are getting more hundreds and thousands of troops, you know, into Kashmir, under the garb of having elections, under the garb of, you know, maintaining the highways now. So basically the true presence in Kashmir is a very clear indication of military occupation. This needs to end. This is a political problem. We have amply said that if this hatred has to stop, this revenge politics, this warmongering between the two countries is not going to lead us anywhere. If killings and counter killings have to stop, we really need to strike at the root of this problem, which is political. Well, it's quite clear that, you know, they are working on many fronts. I mean, militarily they have failed to break the will of the people. Politically they have failed, and now they are coming through fake, you know, these legal and constitutional ways to strike at the root of the Kashmir cause. Basically, you have to understand this 35A is a hereditary law, you know, which prevents any outsider from buying land in Kashmir, and that's what the BJP and the RSS agenda is. They want to change the demography of Kashmir.
So if the taxpayers are paying the money, what is your problem? If the taxpayers are paying money for development of Kashmir, why shouldn't the country have it?
Of Kashmir are going to be on the streets the moment the Indian Supreme Court or any other court, any other channel, they challenge this 35A.
That's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. Check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, grief and horror as back-to-back mass shootings rock the US. Democrats are quick to blame what they call President Trump's inflammatory rhetoric. We ask if there's any truth to that. Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.